Modern motorcycles don't run weak because they're worn out. They run weak because the factory programs them to. Emissions limits, noise rules, and corporate tuning all work together to choke throttle response and bury the torque older riders expect. That's why veteran mechanics passed around a set of illegal tricks quiet adjustments that free airflow, sharpen fuel delivery, smooth ignition, and make a modern bike run the way it should have from day one. None of these steps require buying parts or doing anything reckless. They simply undo the restrictions holding your engine back. Stick around till the end, you'll want every one of these 10 tricks. Number 10. Airflow override. A bike reveals its true nature the moment it can breathe freely. And this trick forces the engine to show you everything it's been hiding. The airflow override is an old mechanics method that restores some of that lost honesty without changing any major component or crossing into unsafe territory. It begins with understanding how modern motorcycles are tuned from the factory. Instead of prioritizing raw pull and crisp response, manufacturers soften airflow to pass noise and emissions targets, lowering intake resonance and flattening the rising edge of throttle behavior. The result is a bike that behaves politely in a showroom, but feels held back once you settle into a long highway ride. This trick addresses that restriction in a direct and controlled way. The key is freeing the initial path of incoming air so the engine can respond more naturally to throttle changes. It does not require replacing the entire intake system or chasing high performance. It simply removes the quieting layers that choke the earliest part of the airflow, letting the engine breathe the way older riders expect. When done correctly, the override sharpens the first quarter turn of the throttle and removes the sluggish sensation many riders notice when rolling out of a parking lot. That early response is where heavy touring motorcycles often feel muted, and this method replaces that hesitation with a steady, confident rise in power. Another benefit is consistency. As engines warm up, airflow restrictions tend to exaggerate the difference between cold and hot operation. By reducing that restriction, the engine maintains a steadier character throughout a ride. This is important for riders who cover far, long distances. The override also restores a subtle acoustic quality many riders miss, giving the intake a deeper, more natural tone without turning the machine into a loud or aggressive setup. This trick is considered illegal only because it steps outside the narrow tuning guidelines set by manufacturers. Not because it compromises safety or reliability. It simply returns breathing priority to the engine instead of the showroom. Now that we've freed the air, it's time to fix the other half of the equation, the fuel the engine's been starving for. Number 9. Fuel curve liberation. Sometimes the throttle feels honest only after you unlock the fuel system from the tight leash the factory wrapped around it. Modern machines often feel different because manufacturers program fuel delivery to satisfy regulations, creating throttle lag that dulls the character of the engine. Fuel curve liberation is the process of freeing the mixture from that softened calibration. It is a subtle but powerful method that restores the crisp response older riders expect. The factory tune leans heavily on conservative fuel mapping to pass standardized tests. While it keeps emissions steady, it also limits the richness needed for strong mid-range pull. This trick addresses that limitation directly. The idea behind fuel curve liberation is to guide the engine back toward a natural burn, rather than the artificially restrictive mixture programmed from the factory. It does not involve reckless fueling or chasing unrealistic performance numbers. Instead, it targets the transitional areas of the map where hesitation usually appears, sharpening the hand-to-engine connection that riders rely on during roll-on acceleration. When done correctly, the engine regains the smooth, deliberate surge that makes heavy motorcycles feel alive instead of muted. It restores the sense of authority riders felt on long road trips, when every twist of the throttle delivered immediate feedback. Another benefit is engine stability. A lean factory mixture can generate heat at cruising speeds, stressing components unnecessarily. Adjusting the fuel curve spreads workload more evenly and helps the engine maintain a consistent personality across varying temperatures. This steadiness matters for older riders who remember the difference between a machine that fights against itself and one that works with the road. By refining the mixture intelligently, the trick brings back that confidence. The engine feels cleaner, stronger, and more willing to respond without delay. fuel curve liberation is considered illegal only because it surpasses the rigid framework manufacturers must follow, not because it harms reliability. With proper understanding and disciplined adjustments, it supports longevity rather than jeopardizing it. This method lays the groundwork for deeper transformations in engine behavior. Horsepower, engine size in cubic centimeters, pound-feet of torque, braking system, suspension setup, wet weight in pounds, seat height in inches, and starting price in fully spelled out dollars remain unchanged because this technique focuses solely on fuel delivery rather than structural or mechanical alteration. Once the mixture is finally honest, the next weak link shows up fast, and it sits right under your clutch lever. If you're still here, you're the kind of rider who actually pays attention to what makes a machine stronger. Make sure you like and subscribe, and let me know what part of your motorcycle's performance you're chasing next, so we keep dialing this in. Number 8, clutch engagement. Hack. Nothing transforms low-speed control faster than a clutch that responds exactly when you expect it to, which is why this adjustment matters more than riders admit. That hesitation often comes from the clutch, not the engine, because manufacturers set engagement deliberately soft to appeal to inexperienced riders and to minimize warranty complaints. The clutch engagement hack restores the firmer, more direct feel long-time riders expect, without replacing major components or compromising safety. It focuses on adjusting the friction zone so the lever responds with precision rather than vague motion. A properly set friction zone tightens the hand-to-wheel connection and gives heavier motorcycles the immediate authority they often lose under soft factory tuning. This trick is simple yet transformative, and riders usually notice the improvement within minutes. The adjustment sharpens low-speed control, reduces clutch slip during slow maneuvers, and restores the confident launch riders relied on back when machines answered without hesitation. It also reduces fatigue in the hand, because a clearer engagement point removes the guesswork that leads to over-pulling the lever during long rides. For older riders managing wrist strain or trike riders handling extra weight, this control improvement is practical rather than cosmetic. The beauty of the clutch engagement hack lies in its discipline, because small adjustments make large differences while keeping the motorcycle safe, predictable, and honest. Many factory setups hide the potential of a strong engine simply by burying the friction point under unnecessary softness. Once the point is raised and clarified, the motorcycle behaves like a seasoned machine again, responding with maturity rather than sluggish hesitation. This method has been favored in garages for decades because it emphasizes rider control, not corporate compliance, and because it brings back the tactile feel that defined earlier generations of heavy cruisers. Horsepower, engine size in cubic centimeters, pound-feet of torque, braking system, suspension setup, wet weight in pounds, seat height in inches, and starting price in fully spelled out dollars remain unchanged, because this technique influences engagement feel rather than mechanical hardware or structural geometry. Sharper control is great, but a bike can't run strong if its cylinders aren't holding pressure. That's where the next trick comes in. Before we move forward, your gears and accessories are right below. Number 7, compression stabilization trick. When firing pressure evens out across both cylinders, the entire machine settles into a smoother rhythm that feels immediately stronger. It shows up in the way the motorcycle hesitates during roll-on acceleration, struggles slightly on steep grades, or feels softer during long highway pulls. Much of that softness comes from gradual compression loss, and the compression stabilization trick is an old garage method that restores pressure without tearing the engine apart. It is based on the simple truth that engines wear unevenly, rings settle, carbon shifts, and microscopic gaps begin to form in places that once held a tight seal. Those gaps allow pressure to escape during the power stroke, and even a small loss of pressure can rob a heavy motorcycle of the low-end authority riders depend on. This trick addresses that loss by conditioning the upper cylinder area so it can reseal more effectively. The process starts with treating the combustion chamber and ring lands with a stabilizing agent that softens hardened carbon and allows the rings to seat more firmly during operation. The method does not mask problems or hide damage. Instead, it restores the conditions under which the engine originally operated. Riders notice smoother idle, steadier acceleration, and better pull at mid-range throttle. Engines with years of stop-and-go use tend to build uneven deposits that keep the rings from flexing properly. Once those deposits are treated, the rings regain freedom of movement, allowing compression to rise back toward optimal levels. A returning rider often describes the result as feeling like the motorcycle shook off a layer of age and remembered how it was meant to run. Another advantage of compression stabilization is heat management. When compression drops, the engine works harder to maintain performance, generating extra heat and stress that older riders can feel in both vibration and fuel consumption. Restoring compression reduces strain, helping the machine run cooler and more consistently over long distances. It also improves starting behavior by giving the ignition a stronger, more reliable pressure wave to work with. This trick has been favored for decades because it requires discipline rather than expensive parts, and because it brings back the honest strength riders expect from a mature engine that still has miles left to give. With compression waking back up, we can finally tackle the real enemy of older engines' carbon that's been baking in for years. Number 6. Thermal purge ride cycle. Heat can teach an engine how to behave, but only if you guide the temperature rise in a controlled, deliberate pattern. It may idle fine, pull steadily, and run without complaint. Yet there is a muted edge that old riders recognize immediately. Much of that dullness comes from carbon buildup created by years of short trips, cool running temperatures, and conservative factory tuning. The thermal purge ride cycle is a time-tested method mechanics have used for decades to burn out those deposits without opening the engine. It relies on controlled heat, sustained RPM, and proper throttle discipline to clean the combustion chamber, exhaust ports, and the upper piston area. When done correctly, it restores the crispness that heavy motorcycles often lose after thousands of easy miles. The process begins by bringing the engine up to full operating temperature, not by idling, but by purposeful riding. Once warmed, the rider holds a steady higher RPM on an open stretch of road, allowing heat to saturate the chamber walls. Heat loosens carbon, and steady RPM helps break down the hardened layers that cling to valves and pistons. This is not reckless riding or aggressive throttle work. It is a steady, calculated cycle that encourages the engine to breathe at its intended temperature range. As the carbon softens, the exhaust note usually changes slightly, developing a smoother and more open tone. Riders often notice a hint of dark smoke during early purges, a sign that old residue is finally being burned away. Another benefit of the thermal purge ride cycle is the restoration of throttle consistency. Carbon can create pockets of uneven fuel burn, causing hesitation, roughness, or delayed response. Once the buildup clears, the engine breathes evenly again, giving back the kind of predictability riders rely on during long touring stretches. It also helps reduce hot spotting, where restricted airflow traps heat in certain areas of the chamber. By clearing those restrictions, the engine cools and warms more uniformly, improving its overall character. This method has been passed down quietly in garages because it demands discipline rather than parts. It brings an aging engine closer to the way it once ran. After you clear the buildup, the engine breathes cleaner, but it won't feel truly alive until the spark fires exactly when it should. Number 5. Stealth timing advance. A small shift in spark timing can wake the throttle in a way that feels almost unreal, especially when the change is buried out of sight. The throttle may still respond, but the spark arrives a fraction later than ideal, creating a muted hand-to-wheel connection that was never part of the machine's original personality. The stealth timing advance is a disciplined method used in many old garages to recover that lost sharpness without pushing the engine beyond safe limits. It is built on the principle that ignition timing influences every part of the ride, from cold starts to roll-on acceleration to highway stability. When the spark fires a touch too late, the engine loses the commanding surge riders expect. When it fires at the correct moment, the machine feels purposeful, willing, and settled. This trick works by adjusting the point at which ignition begins its cycle, moving the spark slightly forward so the burn completes more efficiently. It is not an aggressive race modification or a reckless attempt to chase numbers. It is a careful refinement meant to restore the responsiveness older motorcycles displayed long before digital control units dictated every movement. A properly set timing point gives the the engine a deeper note, a cooler operating temperature under load, and a stronger mid-range pull. Heavy touring machines, in particular, benefit from that restored authority because their engines carry significant weight at every stage of the ride. With the ignition firing when the piston can use it best, the motorcycle regains the confident feel many riders remember from earlier years. The stealth timing advance also helps stabilize fuel burn. A late spark often leaves unburned mixture behind, creating extra heat and inconsistent pulses. Advancing the spark slightly improves combustion efficiency, which leads to smoother idle and a steadier cruising character. Riders notice fewer vibrations, cleaner throttle transitions, and a more predictable response when navigating rolling hills or overtaking on open roads. This method has been respected for generations because it delivers meaningful improvement with thoughtful precision rather than expensive parts. Horsepower, engine size in cubic centimeters, pound-feet of torque, braking system, suspension setup, wet weight in pounds, seat height in inches, and starting price in fully spelled out dollars remain unchanged because this adjustment affects ignition timing rather than mechanical structure. Timing sharpened? Good. Now we need to control the way spent gases leave the engine, because exhaust flow makes or breaks power. If you value real riding knowledge instead of dealership chatter, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next upgrade or hidden technique. Riders who stay informed always get more from their machines, and the next steps are only getting stronger from here. Number 4, controlled back pressure tune. Exhaust flow is a balancing act, and tightening or easing it by the right amount can reshape the engine's character without touching a single major component. Riders often assume that more flow always equals more power. But seasoned mechanics know the truth runs deeper. Engines need a precise level of controlled resistance to maintain proper scavenging, preserve torque, and keep low RPM pull strong enough for heavy touring loads. The controlled back pressure tune is an old-school technique built on decades of hands-on experience. It focuses on shaping exhaust flow, so the engine breathes cleanly, without losing the backbone riders depend on during long climbs, two-up touring, and slow maneuvering. When the balance is right, the machine pulls with a calm confidence that no catalog exhaust can perfectly replicate out of the box. At its core, this method fine-tunes how exhaust pulses interact with chamber clearance. An unrestricted pipe dumps pressure too fast, weakening low-end power and causing uneven throttle response. Excess restriction makes the engine fight its own exhaust, building heat, slowing response, and creating a heavy note that hides mechanical cues. The goal is a balanced flow, where pulses clear the chamber without stripping away torque. Riders often feel the difference quickly. Steadier idle, cooler temperatures under load, and a smoother, stronger mid-range. This balanced back pressure especially benefits those who favor calm, steady cruising instead of frequent aggressive shifting. The controlled back pressure tune can be achieved through measured baffle adjustments, carefully sized inserts, or rebalanced internal packing. These subtle modifications help the engine maintain rhythm, especially during long rides when heat saturation can amplify small inconsistencies. Riders often report steadier throttle transitions, less hesitation when rolling out of slow corners, and a stronger tug when climbing through gentle grades. The improvement feels natural, not forced, because the engine is working with properly timed resistance, instead of fighting against a poorly matched flow. This is a trick that has been handed down in garages for generations, because it requires knowledge, not expensive parts. It enhances the deep, steady character that older riders appreciate. With breathing balanced, the next hidden drag shows up in a place most riders forget: the electrical system that keeps everything alive. Number 3, charging system relief. A motorcycle reveals weakness the moment electrical load climbs, which is why reducing strain on the charging circuit brings performance back to life. Riders often focus on fuel, air, and ignition, but the charging system is the backbone that keeps every component working with the kind of steadiness older machines were known for. When the charging system begins carrying more load than it was designed to handle, the entire motorcycle pays the price. Lights dim, sensors react slowly, idle drops unpredictably, and the battery struggles to recover after long rides. The charging system relief method is a veteran mechanic's approach to restoring electrical stability by reducing unnecessary draw, improving current flow, and helping the battery operate in its ideal range. Many riders learn this trick only after chasing rough idle problems, weak starts, or erratic throttle control for months. The core idea is to eliminate electrical drag by relieving, rerouting, or upgrading loads without changing the motorcycle's character. Older charging systems strain under accessories, heated gear, bright lighting, and short trip wear. The regulator works harder, the stator overheats, and the battery suffers, reducing parasitic draw, cleaning terminals, improving grounds, and rebalancing wiring strengthens voltage stability, especially at low RPM during traffic or slow-speed maneuvering. Another part of this process involves reducing charging spikes and smoothing current delivery. When voltage fluctuates, the ignition system receives inconsistent energy, creating small misfires and delayed throttle response. By restoring stable current flow, the engine regains predictable behavior. Riders feel smoother starts, stronger idle, and better low RPM torque because the battery and regulator are no longer operating at the edge of their limits. The charging system relief method is not about high output stators or aggressive rewiring. It is about reducing strain, so each component operates at a comfortable margin. This trick often revives the sense of mechanical calm that many riders associate with long-distance touring. Once the voltage is steady, it's time to restore the part you touch every mile, the friction zone that controls all your low-speed power. Number 2, friction zone optimization. When the engagement point sits exactly where your hand expects it, the whole machine moves with a confidence that's impossible to fake. Riders feel it first in slow maneuvers, where the bite point wanders just enough to create unease. The friction zone, once a predictable handshake between rider and engine, becomes vague, soft, or abrupt. That inconsistency steals confidence, especially during tight U-turns, loaded touring, or stop-and-go traffic, where low-speed control matters more than raw horsepower. Friction zone optimization is a method older mechanics have relied on for decades to restore that crisp, steady engagement without replacing major components. It focuses on refining the connection between lever movement, clutch pressure, and engine torque delivery. When done correctly, the motorcycle regains the poised control it once had, the kind that experienced riders depend on during long touring days. The first step is correcting slack in the clutch cable or hydraulic linkage, because even slight excess play pushes the friction zone into an unpredictable range. Setting free play within the proper window restores consistency. Next comes smoothing engagement by conditioning the clutch plates with controlled heat cycles. Light partial engagement at low load removes micro glaze and restores a clean, textured surface, bringing back smooth takeoff and dependable modulation. The process continues by refining lever ergonomics. Many riders unknowingly operate with an uncomfortable reach that reduces leverage and weakens feel. Slight repositioning of the lever brings comfort back into the hand, allowing finer control through the full sweep of engagement. A smoother, more predictable friction zone gives riders a sense of command during slow maneuvers, hill starts, and heavy riding conditions where precision overrides speed. The engine feels more willing because power transfers cleanly rather than through a slipping or grabbing interface. Friction zone optimization restores confidence, reduces fatigue, and enhances overall riding poise. This trick revives the harmony between rider and machine, a connection forged through decades of experience on the open road. Dialing in the clutch makes the bike feel new, but the final trick is what ties everything together, the reset your ECU desperately needs. Number 1, complete ECU memory purge. Electronic systems learn bad habits over time, and clearing those learned behaviors can make an engine feel like it just rolled out of the crate. Riders often assume the machine reacts the same way from day 1 to day 10,000, but the control system adapts constantly. It learns throttle patterns, compensates for aging sensors, masks small inconsistencies, and gradually adjusts fuel trim to match whatever conditions it is repeatedly exposed to. Over time, that learned behavior can dull the engine's natural sharpness. Throttle response softens, idle grows uneven, and roll-on acceleration loses the crisp authority that older riders expect from a healthy machine. The complete ECU memory purge is the most comprehensive method for restoring that original feel. It wipes away stale adaptations and forces the control system to relearn the engine as it exists today, not as it once was under different hands or different conditions. The process begins by disconnecting the battery to clear residual power stored in the control unit. This step alone removes stored corrections, but a full purge requires more precision. After the battery is disconnected for a meaningful interval, the ignition is turned on briefly with no power source attached. This discharges the capacitors inside the control unit and ensures that every last fragment of learned behavior is erased. Once power is restored, the engine must be allowed to idle completely untouched for a measured period. During this stage, the control unit rebuilds its baseline, calculating fuel needs, airflow balance, and ignition timing from a clean slate. Riders often notice the idle smoothing out as the system establishes its new foundation. After the initial idle period, the motorcycle must be ridden calmly so the control system can relearn accurate fuel maps and timing curves. With gentle acceleration and steady cruising, the engine regains its natural sharpness. Throttle response strengthens, mid-range pull improves, and restarts stabilize as outdated corrections fade. The complete ECU memory purge restores clarity, making the machine feel renewed and honest again. And that's the full list of 10 illegal tricks to make your motorcycle run better. If you've tried any of these, or have your own, drop it in the comments. If this helped your ride, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. More real rider truth is coming your way.